sound bro-y, like how long were you in the military? But you can Google me and it's super easy to find out. I'm one of the most Googleable women veterans alive. And I got out as a captain. And some people need to be blocked. So we're just going to do that for a little bit. Okay. Good morning. I am working on Chapter 6, Distinguishable Vernacular, the Jargon Jungle of Culting of America. I have to try to edit one chapter a week, which is very optimistic. If we're going to try to get the book out by November. That's the hope. We also have a GoFundMe if you're interested in contributing any amount to the production of a book, which is shockingly expensive, about $100K, if you want to make a good book. Also, if you're buying copies of Uncultured, which is pinned, this is going to the production of the book. Okay. Chapter 6, Distinguishable Vernacular, Jargon Jungle. Picture this. A magnetic leader standing in front of a room packed with people, all eyes glued to her as she speaks in a calm, almost hypnotic tone. She's throwing around words like shadow work, vibrational alignment, and emotional frequency, blending spirituality and psychology in a way that feels mystical, but also oddly scientific. The crowd is nodding along, completely hooked. It's not just a self-help seminar. It feels like she's handing out a key to unlock your deepest wounds and find true healing. Her words are carefully chosen, loaded with meaning, and you start thinking maybe she knows something the rest of the world doesn't. As she keeps talking, it becomes clear that her words aren't just explaining a process. They're creating a whole new reality. In her world, your pain has a purpose and your struggles can be solved if you just raise your frequency. I got it that you're not a bro. That's why I said if the question sounded bro-y. Just so you're aware, when I see a question like that, first thing from someone, how long were you in the military? Like, no, I don't have to prove myself to you. And nobody does it to Mr. Knitting Cult Lady. Negative emotions, she calls them lower vibrations. Doubts, that's resistance. And if anyone questions her teachings, well, they're just stuck in low vibrational thinking to understand. It's more than a message. It's a world view. And we have talked about worldviews in chapter 2. And her followers aren't just listening. They're reshaping how they see themselves and the world all through her language. Suddenly, everything fits into her framework, and it feels like you're part of something bigger, something only a select few truly get. Most of your friends and family are not going to get this. Only 10% of people are really going to connect to this on an emotional frequency. That's not actually in the text. And who is this leader weaving such a captivating web of ideas? None other than Teal Swan, the spiritual influencer. I might take out her name. I haven't decided yet. But in the musical, Woo Woo Lady is going to be wearing a version of the swan dress in teal. Sue me for that. Hello, everybody. This is the scarf that one of my BFFs got me when I graduated from Harvard for my master's, 20 years after leaving a cult, no education, on my birthday. And I went to see Tom Hanks give a speech. Best day ever. And it was like the end of my decade of deconstruction and the beginning of phase 3. All right, back to the text. But it's not just about teal. Scroll through Instagram and you'll stumble on buzzwords like clean eating, detox, self-care rituals, superfoods, and mindfulness. These aren't just words, they're signals. If you get it, you're part of the club. Phrases like align your chakras or nourish your soul start to feel like magic spells, creating a sense of belonging that outsiders can't touch. Hashtags like wellness warrior or hashtag healthy mindset reinforce that connection. And suddenly, you're not just following tips, you're living the lifestyle. It's not just the health and wellness jargon that pulls people in. There's a whole subculture blending spirituality with conspiracy theories, something people are calling con-spirituality. And I still need to add a bunch of research from the book called that, and also from like things outside of cults. So if you all hear things that you know of someone writing about, like put it in the chat. It's like a mashup of yoga poses and deep state conspiracies with terms like awakened, truth seeker, and 5D consciousness popping up alongside toxin-free lifestyle and superfood smoothies. Sorry, I need to put quantum in there. Oh, quantum is such a favorite of cult leaders. Spell it. Okay. It's bizarre, but it works. For some, it's not enough to eat clean or practice mindfulness. They're looking for a deeper, more provocative take on life, one that feels revolutionary, even if it's a little out there. I know you're like up here thinking that you're being like uniquely critical of the military, but I wrote an entire best-selling book calling it a cult, and I'm reading another one that I've just finished writing criticizing the military. So like, welcome. Maybe if you listen for a little bit first, you'll get what we're about here. This language, whether it's about clean living or 5D consciousness, creates an insider vibe that's hard to resist. It's a badge that says you're part of an exclusive tribe, one that gets it. It's not just about health tips or spiritual advice. It's about being in. And once you're in, it's hard not to look at the outside world and think they just don't understand. That's the power of these words. They're not just catchy. They're a ticket to belonging, and they make the message, however magical or bizarre, feel absolutely irresistible. I did make these earrings. I call them circular logic earrings, and I have them in my TikTok shop. They're like in a few different colors, but you can also just be like, any, write whatever color you want in the notes. Magical thinking. Yes. Yes, 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 yes. And charisma, as we find out in chapter 1 on the charismatic leader, is merely because human beings got so advanced scientifically that we lost the concept of magic from our lives. So we recreated it as charisma. This one is not an audiobook yet. This one is the book I'm currently writing. Like we are actively editing right now, but also getting your opinion. My book, Uncultured, which is pinned here, is on audio. So 4.9 star apparently on audio. Okay, creating a distinct language or jargon is one of the most powerful tools cults and high control groups use to build identity and create that feeling of exclusivity. By coming up with their own set of words and phrases, they not only reinforce their beliefs, but also make it tough for outsiders to really understand what's happening. And let's be honest, it's not just cults that do this. You see this everywhere. I'm sorry, I need to put magical thinking in here. It's best. And didn't we discover in chapter 1 that charisma is in fact a replacement for the loss of magic in our human lives? Thanks, YouTube person. All the social community is getting a credit in the book. So nice that you say you want to be me when I grow up, because when I was getting out of the military as a 27-year-old woman, and for many years after that, me and my mom would just talk about how I was trying to figure out what I was going to be when I grew up. Decided to be me. And let's be honest, it's not just cults that do this. You see this everywhere, in corporations, social movements, even fandoms. Amanda Montell, author of Cultish, The Language of Fanaticism, nails it when she says language is the ultimate tool for making and breaking human relationships, and that language is a leader's charisma. From outside, the way leaders use language can seem almost magical, like they've got some special power to draw people in. But Margaret Singer cuts through that mystique, saying how cult leaders and other clever operators get people to do their bidding seems arcane and mysterious to most persons. But I find there is nothing esoteric about it at all. There are no secret drugs or potions. It's just words and group pressures put together in packaged forms. That's the real kicker. Cults don't need any kind of mystical force to keep their members under control. They just need the right words at the right time. With carefully crafted language, cult leaders create a world where their ideas are accepted without question. They throw around loaded phrases, repeat key messages endlessly, and use thought-stopping cliches to cut down any critical thinking. Shut down. It's all part of the plan to make the group's ideology feel like the truth, the only truth. This packaged language is incredibly effective because it taps into emotions, social dynamics, and the human need for belonging. It reshapes how members see themselves and the world, all while making it feel like these ideas just naturally click. That's the genius of it. It's not magic or mind control. It's words, strategically chosen and delivered to manipulate and dominate. Once you understand that, you start to see these tactics everywhere, not just in cults, but in any system or organization that wants to control how people think, act, and behave. It's a reminder that language isn't just a tool, it's power. That's why white supremacy is obsessed with the written word, because that's how they control power. The power of language. Oops, that's okay, YouTube comments for a second. All repackaged prosperity gospel. That is very true. I believe we take on Trump and prosperity gospel a little bit. Let me unpin the book. Pin the Culting Knitting Patterns book for a minute. I'm going to unpin it because I don't care about it. Pin all the products. Got some posters in there. Okay. Ooh, linguist. The power of language. Language has always been one of the most powerful tools humans have, shaping history in ways we sometimes don't even notice. In his book, Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind, Dr. Yuval Noah Harari argues that the secret to humanity's success lies in our unique ability to communicate. Specifically, it's our talent for storytelling and creating cultural myths that allows us to live in huge societies and work together towards shared goals. It's not easy to tell a story that sticks, but when it works, it gives Sapiens immense power because it enables millions of strangers to cooperate and work toward common goals. This storytelling superpower really leveled up once we started writing things down. Writing allowed us to build myths and share knowledge that went way beyond what our brains could remember and pass down. Harari points out that any information stored in the brain will be erased in less than a century. But with early forms of writing, like cuneiform in ancient Mesopotamia or hieroglyphics in Egypt, we started preserving these stories and ideas for generations. Through these writings, we can even hear bits of history straight from the people who lived it, though filtered through our own context and language, of course. Interestingly, cult leaders seem to understand the power of language and documentation better than most. They often have their followers write down or record everything they say, ensuring their teachings stick. Even in the US Army, every soldier is expected to carry around a green book to jot down notes whenever a superior is talking. And General David Petraeus, he made them take notes of what he said, even while running 6-minute miles up and down the 101st Airborne Division Main Road. General Petraeus is one of my favorite example cult leaders. He's also known as General Betray Us to the 101st, generally. Why are you giving me? No, stop it. Okay. Whether it's hieroglyphics, green books, or journals filled with the words of a charismatic leader, the power of language isn't just about talking. It's about making these stories last. Even gossip, Harari tells us, is an important tool for human development and social cohesion. He calls it a much maligned ability, which is in fact essential for human cooperation. Gossip isn't just idle chatter. It's how people share information about social norms, behaviors, and reputations. It helps define what's acceptable within a community and acts as a way to bond, allowing people to connect over shared experiences or concerns. By talking about others' actions, gossip reinforces trust, cultural values, and social order. Essentially, it's how societies regulate behavior and foster cooperation. Cults, though, despise gossip. Margaret Singer explains that most cults have strict no gossip or no nattering rules designed to prevent members from expressing doubts or concerns. The US Army's version of this is don't bring up a problem unless you have a solution. As though the people that diagnose problems and the people that come up with solutions are the same people. Leaders justify these rules by claiming that gossip will destroy group unity, but the real reason is simple. It stops members from sharing anything but positive spin. On top of that, members are often required to report anyone who breaks the rule, creating an environment of isolation and deeper dependence on leadership. We learned in the last chapter that this group policing of members is called performative regulation, one of the best named terms ever. I saw a version of this in the US Army. Look, I wrote it down. Where the unofficial rule was don't bring up a problem unless you have a solution. On paper, it sounds practical, but in reality, it was a way to stifle discussions about anything negative. It wasn't about solutions. It was about controlling the conversation and keeping the focus on marching forward, even if there were serious issues right under the surface. Because cults always cares more about control than they care about successful operations. Just like in cults, shutting down honest talk about problems only strengthens the leadership's control and the punishment for if you don't report. I think we mentioned that. We are reading Chapter 6 of Culting of America on distinguishable vernacular, or the jargon jungle. I like Kisma, the Spanish version of gossip. Gossip might have a bad reputation, but it's actually great for humans and terrible for anyone trying to enforce top-down control. Controlling leaders hate gossip because it's one of the few things they can't fully regulate. When people start talking on their own, they share stories, doubts, and grievances. that can seriously undermine a leader's power. Gossip spreads awareness about hypocrisy or bad behavior, and once these stories circulate, loyalty starts to crumble. Oh, I need to put a Yanya Lalich quote in here. Sorry, one sec. I don't know why I'm apologizing for editing when what we're doing here is editing. Yanya quote about how once people share stories of their cult leaders, they realize they are all basically the same. Messiah school. Gossip spreads awareness about hypocrisy or bad behavior, and once those stories circulate, loyalty starts to crumble. It's also why leaders work so hard to crack down on it, labeling gossip as negative or divisive to shut it down. It's a classic tactic to isolate members and keep them in line, ensuring that no one's doubts or misgivings can gain any traction. Language isn't just about communication. It's a tool for influence, shaping how we see the world and the choices we make. I need to put Harari quote here. Harari quote. No, I need to make a quote. Harari quote about how apes can say, look, eagle, but they can't plan to say it in order to steal each other's food or talk behind their backs. Leaders and organizations know this and use techniques like framings, euphemisms, and loaded language to manipulate thoughts without us even realizing it. Think about it. Calling a policy pro-life instead of anti or anti-choice, or saying enhanced interrogation instead of sure, makes something more controversial sound more acceptable. Repetition is another big one. Hear phrases like fake news or witch hunt enough times, and they start to feel like facts instead of just someone's spin. Then there are thought-stopping cliches, those quick, catchy lines like trust the plan or doubt your doubts that seem deep, but really just shut down critical thinking. And jargon, that's the ultimate insider move. It separates us from them, making it harder for outsiders to challenge the group's ideas or even have a real conversation about them. All these tactics turn language into more than a way to share ideas. It becomes a way to control how we act and think. Think and act. Just like appearance control is always about behavior control. It's never just about appearance. From catchy political slogans to viral hashtags or cult-specific jargon, words still have the power to shape identities and control narratives. High-control groups know this better than anyone and create their own language that members are expected to use. It's like a secret handshake. Know the lingo and you're part of the in crowd. But in cults, this insider language goes a step further, building a wall between members and the outside world. If you're not fluent in their terms, you're automatically an outsider who just doesn't get it. For members, this can feel comforting. It's a sense of belonging, but it also cuts them off from ideas that challenge the group's beliefs. Amanda Montell, who's studied cult language, points out that this jargon isn't just about forming a community. It's also about shutting down critical thinking. Phrases like doubt your doubts or you just don't understand yet create a mental loop that stops questions before they even start. And it's not just cults doing this. Multi-level marketing MLM schemes use similar tactics with lines like winners never quit. That little phrase makes leaving feel like a personal failure, not a logical choice, trapping people in the system even when it's clearly not working. And the Special Operations Aviation Red regiment that my husband retired from has their own version of this motto. Night stalkers never quit, or NSDQ. He now likes to say, but they do retire. However, for me, it felt heartbreaking to watch them and the U.S. Army at large treat him like he was quitting the team. Instead of retiring after fulfilling much more than his contract with them. Whether it's in a cult, a corporation, or a movement, language is one of the most powerful ways to keep people hooked and in line. Night Stalker's going to be pretty mad at me for putting this in the book. Porque eu não lavei as lençóis porque eu já fiz em segunda-feira. Okay. Yeah. Now in our digital world, language is an even bigger game changer than ever before. Social media algorithms and targeted ads are all built around language, pushing ideas into our heads faster than we can even process them. It's how movements go viral in a matter of hours, or how people find themselves stuck in echo chambers, constantly surrounded by content that reinforces what they already believe. Movements go viral. I'm going to talk about Hillman talk. The digital landscape amplifies certain phrases and messages, making them feel like universal truths, while burying opposing viewpoints. It's not just about expressing ideas anymore. It's about shaping entire realities, steering public opinion, and sometimes even radicalizing people, all through the power of language. We see this in its extreme form in the story of Derek Black, who, as we talked about before, was the son of John Black, who founded the internet's largest hate site, stormfront.org, and the godson of David Duke, a former KKK Grand Wizard, who used the internet to popularize phrases like white genocide, reverse racism, and racial realities. Fast forward through history from that beginning Harari told us about, and you see how language gets weaponized in all sorts of ways. Think about religious texts, how those sacred words were used to guide, or sometimes control, entire populations, or political leaders who knew exactly how to manipulate language to get people on their side. Mustache Man is the obvious extreme example, using speeches to stir up dangerous nationalism and convince an entire country to follow his twisted ideology. The power of words has always been about more than just saying things. It's about shaping how people think and behave. And Donald Trump trademarked the phrase, "Make America Great Again." Even though Reagan said it first, well before he ever ran for president. Yeah, my book's for sale a lot of places. Oi, Português! Treinador capoeira. I've been meaning to make a video about this, about how, like, when Black Brazilians who were enslaved were told that they couldn't train for fighting, they invented capoeira, the fighting dance. Trying to tell people about how, like, different cultures react to things differently. Germans joke about how they've never had a popular revolution because peasants couldn't afford the train fare. Americans will just tear up your train lines. Leaders quickly figured out that language could be used for more than just communication. It became a way to control people, maintain order, and build empires. The right words could rally armies or keep entire populations in check. Margaret Singer tells us that Orwell, 1984, was perhaps the first to note that language, not physical force, is key to manipulating minds. In fact, growing evidence in the behavioral science reveals that a smiling big brother has greater power to influence an individual's thought and decision-making than does a visibly threatening person. Similarly, Amanda Montell tells us language was Jim Jones's secret weapon. It wasn't Jones's looks, family optics, or even his ideas that hooked people. It was his way with words. And in Jim Jones's case, it was a way with words he'd been practicing since practically infancy. And also, every U.S. president whom we have recordings of has a rather distinct way of speaking. And you can't convince me that RFK doesn't do that stuff with his voice on purpose. I think Trevor Noah and his thing about how, like, Nelson Mandela coached Barack Obama to have a unique voice is, like, more real than people get. In today's America, we can see how leaders like Trump have borrowed language tactics from figures like Mustache Man, using phrases like enemy within to create an us versus them mentality. By framing dissenters, critics, or marginalized groups as dangerous insiders trying to undermine the country, Trump taps into deep-rooted fears and division. This strategy isn't just about labeling an enemy. It's about shifting blame away from himself and rallying his base around a common threat. It's a tactic that gets people to think they need to protect the group from infiltration, making loyalty to the leader feel like a matter of survival. This kind of language not only stirs up fear and anger, but it also shuts down critical thinking. When the leader says there's an internal threat, it discourages questioning and reinforces the idea that any dissent is a betrayal. It's an age-old tactic. Keep everyone looking for enemies, and they'll be too distracted to question the person giving the orders. I have to put something here about the drone brief yesterday. This was not the enemy. What's this little anonymous skinny white woman? Cult language's impact on identity and behavior. Oh, also, yes, I speak Portuguese because I grew up in Brazil. Using a group's special language does more than just make you feel like part of the in crowd. It starts changing the way you think and act. Once you're talking in their terms, your thoughts begin to line up with the group's ideology. The more you speak their language, the more you start seeing the world the way they do. Before you know it, you can lose touch with your own identity because you're so wrapped up in the group's mindset. It's like your inner voice gets replaced by theirs, and your ability to think critically starts to fade away. Amanda Montell calls it the code language of an exclusive clubhouse. These special terms don't communicate anything that cannot be said in plain English. Using them in the right way at the right time is like unlocking the group's acceptance. As Singer points out, language is a key part of converting or reshaping new cult members. You affirm that you accept and understand the ideology by beginning to talk in the simple catchphrases particular to the groups. This communication has no foundations, since in reality, you have little understanding of the system beyond the catchphrases. But once you begin to express your seeming verbal acceptance of the group's ideology, then that ideology becomes the rule book for subsequent direction and evaluation of your behavior. Some of this feels a bit repetitive. Language has incredible power to shape how we think and behave. I've already said this. Amanda Montell's Cultish tells us that creating special language to influence people's behavior and beliefs is so effective in part simply because speech is the first thing we're willing to change about ourselves and also the last thing we let go. That's why recognizing and challenging these linguistic tactics is so important. If you don't, you end up trapped in a bubble where your thoughts are being constantly shaped by the language they've handed you. But once you start seeing how these words are used to manipulate and control, you can begin to dismantle their power. It's about reclaiming your autonomy, both in how you think and how you speak. When you push back against their jargon, you take the first step toward freeing yourself from that control. Understanding how language is used to control people doesn't just help in cults or high control groups. It's useful in any setting where there's a push to conform or fall in line. Whether it's the workplace, a social movement, or even a friendship, being aware of these tactics can help you keep your identity and beliefs intact. In the end, knowing how language shapes your perspective allows you to navigate the world on your own terms, making sure that what you believe and how you live are decisions you make for yourself. Yep, there's this comment here that says, Teal seemed like she had some great ideas, but after 2 videos, you start getting, and this is like all cult leaders, like it seems like they have great ideas, and sometimes they do have some things that work. Yes, this is a new book. It's called Culting of America. Doesn't every line of business have its own language? This kind of language control doesn't just show up in cults. It's everywhere, from toxic workplaces to exclusive social groups. Corporate buzzwords like synergy or disruptive innovation might sound harmless, but they create a clear divide between the people who get it and those who don't. If you ever sat through a meeting where phrases like circle back or low-hanging fruit were tossed around like confetti, you felt it. The unspoken rule that understanding this jargon is the price of admission. What's supposed to streamline communication ends up creating an insider culture where only the initiated belong. In the tech world, this goes into overdrive. Terms like scaling, pivoting, or disruptive AI solutions aren't just buzzwords. They're a way of signaling who's in the know. If you don't understand what it means when a startup says they're pivoting to a B2B SaaS model, you're immediately on the outside. This language creates an air of exclusivity, making everyday business decisions sound groundbreaking while leaving those who aren't fluent feeling lost. It's not that different from how cults use insider jargon to build a sense of belonging while keeping outsiders at arm's length. Nonprofits do it too, with phrases like capacity building, stakeholder engagement, or social impact. To those in the field, these terms are shorthand that signals expertise and belonging. But to anyone outside the space, potential donors, volunteers, or just curious outsiders, it can feel like a foreign language. This creates barriers, even when the goal is to bring people together. It mirrors the way high control groups use specialized language to strengthen group identity while subtly discouraging outsiders from engaging. Military acronyms take it to another level. If you've ever talked to someone in the armed forces, you've probably been hit with a barrage of AAR, FOBs, and SOPs. It's practical in high-stress situations, sure, but it also reinforces group unity. If you don't know what an AAR, after-action report, is, you're clearly not part of the culture. These acronyms build bonds within the group while keeping everyone on the outside. It's not just about efficiency. It's also about identity. Even academia isn't immune. Scholars throw around terms like peer-reviewed or double-blind study, as if everyone knows what they mean. But to outsiders, it can feel like a different language entirely. In scientific communities, phrases like statistical significance or control variables are essential to understanding research, but they also act as gatekeepers. They make it hard for anyone outside the field to engage, creating a sense of exclusivity that starts to resemble the manipulative language control of cults. In all these sectors, jargon can strengthen group identity, but when taken too far, it becomes a tool for exclusion, making insiders feel special and leaving everyone on the outside. So now that I've convinced you that language is powerful and used for control, I'm going to talk about the types of language that cults use. And this is like an extremely long chapter, so I'm not going to get through it. So I'm just going to like tell you a little bit about the types of language. So first we have, we are special / unique language. Every single cult is the thing. Singer tells us that almost all cults make the claim that their members are chosen, select, or special, while non-members are considered lesser beings. It's one of the reasons we cult hop, because we need to be special. Familial language in cults. Cults love to toss around words like brother, sister, and even call the leader mother or father to make the group feel like one big happy family. It's not just sweet talk, it's strategy. The children of God, that's what they did. Here's the trap. Here's the truth. Real love doesn't require you to sacrifice yourself to prove it. Whether it's a cult, a company, or any high demand group, when they start throwing around family language, it's often a giant red flag. They want your time, your loyalty, and your energy without having to learn it. And when you finally see through it, you realize their version of family is just another way to keep you stuck, working harder and questioning less. And of course, somewhere here, I tell you, anything that calls itself your family wants to overwork you, underpay you, and expect you to put up with more BS than you would otherwise. Okay, then call and response and group chanting. One of the oldest tricks in the book for building identity and loyalty. It's all about repetition and rhythm. I need to add something in here about my concept that cults just take these things that work in communities of color and then just use them for power in their groups and like hack them, and then it, falls apart. This part's fun. Dr. Lalich points out that chanting sits alongside other mind-altering techniques like long prayer sessions, hypnosis, sleep deprivation, and meditation as tools of psychological coercion. She says former members of groups that use a lot of chanting, speaking in tongues, intense group criticism, hypnotic and guided imagery sessions, and meditation and other trance techniques frequently experience floating episodes. And sometimes it can go darker. Margaret Singer explains that chanting can lead to hyperventilation on purpose. She describes how the condition is easily induced by having people do continuous loud shouting and chanting. For example, the effect can be produced by having individuals stand and repeatedly thrust their clenched fists outward while simultaneously shouting in a loud voice with heavy exhalation, "Love our leader, love our leader, love our leader." Anyone who's ever faked an orgasm knows exactly what this looks like. That's why I love that paragraph. Okay. Military, they do this, blah, blah, blah. Then trance talk. Cult leaders are pros at using trance talk to pull followers into a state where they're more emotionally tuned in and way more open to suggestion. This isn't just regular talking. It's a rhythmic, hypnotic style of speech that keeps people hooked, like they're hearing something profound or life-changing. Amanda Montell describes it as a quick-changing vocabulary used for social capital. Blah, blah, blah. The first guy who invented today's the first day of the rest of your life is a cult leader. L. Ron Hubbard, Scientology. Donald Trump, trance talk. Keith Raniere, trance talk. Boom. New type of language, loaded language. Cults, corporations, and political movements all love using loaded language. Everyday words that get new, specific meanings within the group, meanings that outsiders just don't get. Like how you all watch the bros, just forced to show up here and comment on the blue-haired, basket-weaving, liberal arts degree-holding woman. And they think they know what they're doing, but they're paying me. And then we have thought-stopping cliches. Thought-stopping cliches are one of the go-to tools for keeping people from questioning things in high-control groups. And you all at one point gave me a list of 600 of them that are probably going to be like linked to in this book, because I want everyone to have to read every other group's thought-stopping cliches. Alcohol is Anonymous. One day at a time, fake it till you make it. Military, take a Motrin, drink water, and carry on. You signed up for this. Embrace the suck. Mission first. Even drink the Kool-Aid. And of course, corporate America has, it's just business. Work hard, play hard. We're all family here. Professionalism. Failure is not an option. Thought-stopping cliches are everywhere. Another type of language. The show must go on. Good one. Blaming individuals for systemic failure. And this is where we talk about prosperity doctrine and blah, 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 blah. A very, very cult thing. All of this needs research. Degrading self-talk. Cult members are masters. Cults are masters of getting members to tear themselves down. In the Children of God, for example, any natural emotions or doubts were labeled as being in the dumps with the devil. Blah, blah, blah. Group criticism. Cults are experts at using group criticism to control their members, all while pretending it's about helping people. And here we talk again about Charles Diederich of Synanon. Troubled teen industry, large group awareness trainings, landmark EST, and anything that ends in Oni Robbins. Justified lying. This is a category that just has a note saying, you're actually going to read about this in the ends justifies the means chapter, but we just want you to know here that justified lying is a form of cult speech. Desensitizing language toward in-group members, like we call it flirty fishing, not religious prostitution. Dehumanizing language toward out-group members, calling them enemies or threats or suppressive persons or systemites. And finally, why do cults always have comics? Because a picture is worth 1,000 words. Imagery, blah, blah, blah. Helicopter pilot who dropped stuff over a rock, also known as Mr. Knitting Cult Lady. Why I've spent my whole life trying to put it into words about the Taylor Swift fan-elect and why it's so cray-cray when politicians try to use it. A note about grammar fascism, because being a grammar Yahtzee is more tied to being a real Nazi than we realize. And finally, unlearning the cult language. This is the chapter that goes the most into like the deconstruction. It's not very much, but... And that's it. 41 pages. It still needs a lot of research. So hopefully I'll take out a lot of the repetitiveness, but really I'll probably just make it 45 pages. And then my wonderful editor will cut it down. Okay, that's the end of my stream for today. I am recording chapters and putting them on Patreon as they're getting done. Right now I have chapter 3. I just have to find the time to do that. Bye for today.